Hello, friends. Welcome to Momentum Boost. I'm your host, Adrienne Gold Davis, and I'm very thankful that you're joining us today. Now, remember, if you want to ask the guests a question, and this time you are really going to want to, you just make sure to type it into the chat box that's on the right. So let's begin with this. The term Jew, Yehudi, is linked to the Hebrew word hoda'ah, which means thanks. We Jews are called Yehudim from the name Yehuda, which means to express thanks, to express gratitude, to admit that we're indebted. Today, we're going to try and put the thanks back into Thanksgiving by understanding that the role of gratitude in both the spiritual and the psychological spaces has a place. How does gratitude play a role in mental and spiritual health? So to answer that, we've brought together two great minds, a rabbi and a psychologist, who are going to compare best practices around the efficacy of gratitude in the healing journey. Joining us today is Rabbi David Aaron. He's a spiritual educator and the author of many books, including The Secret Life of God and Love is My Religion. Also joining us is Dr. Stephanie Bott. She's a clinical psychologist, a psychoanalyst, and the owner of both WorkRight and Dr. Stephanie Bott and Associates, a mental health services private practice located in Toronto, Canada. My welcome to both of you, Dr. Bott and Rabbi Aaron. Hi.
Hi.
Is it okay for me to say a rabbi and a therapist walked into a bar? Actually, walked into a Zoom screen. I have been looking forward to this for a long time, not just because I know that both of you are extraordinary in the work that you do, but because the questions that I have, I know that most of our viewers have. So I'm going to put them out there, and I'm going to allow either one of you to decide who goes first, and then we're going to flow with it. We'll compare and contrast and see what comes up. So let's begin. So gratitude is the theme that we're using here. And I wondered a couple of things. First of all, I know that in Judaism, for example, gratitude plays an important role. But I wonder, Dr. Bott, is there a role in the therapeutic process for gratitude, or is that strictly a spiritual pursuit? And I guess I'm wondering also what practices and strategies in treatment might ever include the practice of gratitude.
I've been thinking about it a lot, Adrienne, the idea of gratitude and the role that it plays in my practice. And I was thinking about how it's really something that happens as an undercurrent, partly at first, just through the fact that I'm so grateful for the work that I do, for the people that I get to work with, for what I get to learn about from every person who enters my office, and also grateful for what comes to me when I'm working with someone and what wisdom might be given to me that I'm able to depart that might be helpful to the people that I'm working with. And I think that that's how, for me, gratitude first shows up. I think when people think of gratitude in therapy, they think about it as an idea like I might assign someone homework to think about what they're grateful for in their life and things like that. But I feel like it's so much deeper and so much broader as a concept, and it has to be thought of in a much more nuanced way, in the sense that when people come to me and they're really, really troubled, if I start from a place of gratitude and encouraging them to be thankful for the wonderful things that they have in their life, to focus on the full part of their glass instead of the empty part, I'm going to have an empathic break with those people. Because sorry, go ahead.
No, what do you mean by an empathic break?
Well, what I mean is that if someone's coming in to tell me about a trauma or a huge loss in their life, and I start immediately trying to shift them into being grateful for maybe having known that person who passed away, or maybe, look what you've learned from the experience that you have, I'm going to miss their story. I'm going to miss what brought them to the place that they're feeling broken or hurt. And they're not going to feel that I understand them. And I would be jumping ahead. So I was kind of thinking about gratitude on a continuum. The idea that there's levels of gratitude, and that where I would be starting is sharing my gratitude with them for sharing their story with me.
Wow. Rabbi, what do you say about that? Like, I'm not sure what the process is. I'm sure that penitents come to you, people come to you, I know. And one of the reasons we're having this conversation is because, I mean, I'm neither a rabbi nor a therapist, but because I work in this spiritual world, people want to ask me things that are way beyond me, that are sometimes pathologies that need a therapist, that sometimes need a rabbi such as yourself. So I wonder, how do you respond to the question that I asked Stephanie? What do you do around gratitude at the onset of practicing to help a person grow?
Well, first of all, from a Torah point of view, gratitude is the master key to everything in our lives. And that the story of Adam and Eve, most people don't realize that the flaw, the mistake they made, was really rooted in a lack of gratitude. Here we are in the Garden of Eden. We have everything. There's just one tree you can't have. And of course, which tree do we want? That one. That's a lack of gratitude. You know, you got so much. And what you're focusing on is what you don't have rather than so much that you have.
Okay.
And then after they do make this mistake and they eat from this tree, and Hashem, God says, the creator says to them, why did you eat from the tree? Says to Adam. And Adam says, well, it's the woman that you gave me. He's like, again, a lack of gratitude. So really, the root of the problem that, so to speak, kicks off the world's problem is this lack of gratitude. And why is gratitude so important? You know, the other day, my grandson was here and he asked for a candy. So I gave him a candy and I said, what do we say? He looked at me like, I don't know, what do you say? And I said, what do we say? And he went, thank you, you know? And like, what did I feel great about that? I forced him to say thank you. Why do we teach our children to say thank you? Because thank you means I acknowledge that you care for me. And if I don't say thank you, then I'm forgetting what was really the gift. It wasn't the candy. It was the show of care. And the foundation of mental health is feeling cared for. And when people don't feel, they feel like anyone could care less about them. What a horrible feeling. So, you know, when I'm at the sea, I've never thanked the sea. I've never say, sea, thank you so much for the breeze. Because I don't believe that the sea cares about me. But when I'm at the sea, I say to the creator, thank you. Because I believe that the sea is a gift. And therefore, really the foundation of everything in our lives, the master key to opening up everything in our lives, is the ability to say thank you, which is the ability to recognize that I am loved and I am cared for.
So this is a beautiful statement, but going back to the way that we looked at the paradigm just before, if a person is broken and they come to you in a state of pain, there has to be first steps to getting them to internalize that there is what to be grateful for. So as a therapist, I understand that you would never go there right away because that's not why they came to you. But as a rabbi, I wonder, how do you integrate gratitude as a practice to someone trying to improve the quality of their life? So I guess, Stephanie, Dr. Bott, for you first, what are the first steps in the spiritual and the psychological practices that will open up a pathway to a better life? As a therapist, I want to ask you, and then Rabbi Aaron, I want to ask you as a rabbi, what are the first steps into internalizing what you both have just said?
For me, Adrian, what I would say is that when you work with people and you demonstrate attunement and compassion and validation for their experiences and for what's happened to them, I think that in that appreciation for their story, you are demonstrating a type of gratitude. And I think gratitude needs to be thought of as a very nuanced idea that has many layers to it. And appreciation of someone's experience is a form of gratitude. And part of what happens in the therapeutic process is people internalize what you're offering them so that they can hopefully over time start offering it to themselves. And so if they come from a place where they, as Rabbi Aaron was saying, don't feel cared for, don't feel loved, don't feel appreciated, and now they're sharing an experience with somebody who's giving them something different, they're offering something new, that starts to make shifts. And where someone might originally start coming in and not giving eye contact and feeling angry about all sorts of things, as they start feeling heard and understood, they start to shift. And they start to think, well, wait, this is kind of different. I can't maintain my view that everybody treats me terribly. I can't maintain my view that I'm not respected and understood because this person is offering me something different. And so through that, we get a very slow and gentle entry into the idea that there are other possibilities of how to think about what happens to them. And hopefully that evolves into something where they can start to experience a sense of appreciation for the therapy, for their experiences. And to me, the ultimate end goal of this very slow and gradual process would them to ultimately be thankful for the negative things that happened, that they were able to learn from, and that helped them become the person that they are now.
Wow. And that process happens even though they're paying you for your services?
Yes, which I'm grateful
I
for.
know it sounds funny, but, everybody, I have this great therapist, they really listen to me. I feel loved. And, you hear people say, yeah, well, you pay them. So I guess you can't fake that empathy. You have to really bring
Fake it.
yourself.
I just want to say one more thing on that point, just to go a little step beyond the empathy, is I was thinking about what really I think instills change in my patients is my belief in them. I have such powerful conviction in my belief for them to heal and lead meaningful and fulfilling lives that I think it becomes contagious and they start to believe it themselves.
Now, Rabbi Aaron, did the principles that Stephanie spoke about, do they have a place themselves in the way a person would approach spirituality as a healing modality? Or are there times as a rabbi where you've had to say, there's a place for therapy in your journey and we don't want to put all of this holiness into a broken vessel, go fix the vessel first?
Oh, absolutely. Before a person can begin to embrace spirituality, they have to be basically healthy in a good space, because you don't want spirituality to be an escape. You want a spirituality to be an enhancement of a continual growth. And I completely agree with Dr. Bott that when a person comes to me in pain, the first thing they're looking for is validation of their pain. It's like if my son came in and he had scraped his knee and he's crying, and it's really a tiny cut. He doesn't want to hear me say, oh, that's really nothing. That's a tiny cut. What he wants me to say is, oi, 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 oi. He'll then say to me, well, it's not that bad, Daddy. Because he first wants to feel cared about, validated. And as you mentioned, in the Hebrew word todah, is actually two interesting words. Todah means to acknowledge. And todah also means to emotionally feel gratitude, and they really come together. When you give somebody care and they begin to acknowledge that they're cared for, then the feelings of gratitude are naturally generated by that. And so you can't reach higher levels unless you have a fundamentally healthy basis. And I believe that healthy basis is that you feel cared for and you feel believed in. Now, we have an amazing practice, which is every day we have a tradition to wake up in the morning and the first thing we say is Moda ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla rabbi v'techa. That's all in Hebrew. But what we basically say is, thanking I am before you because you gave me back my soul. Great is your faith in me. Now imagine that's the first thing that rolls off my mouth in the morning, that I wake up and affirm that I am grateful because I am alive. And if I am alive, that means the Creator believes in me I have something of importance to do today. I matter to the Creator. Now, if we could really believe that, that would be the foundation of mental health, that I matter, that I make a difference, that I'm truly cared for. And when I feel cared for and that I matter, then I will be filled with an incredible flow of gratitude.
Hmm. Hmm. So it's interesting, Dr. Bott, I'm thinking as I listen to Rabbi Aaron speak, I'm thinking, this is a language that seems universal to me, but is it off the table in a therapeutic model for the doctor to ever discuss ideas of spirituality? What are the laws and rules around that?
So there are rules that I'm not allowed to impose my religious beliefs on another person. Of course, the college has some pretty strict ideas, just like I couldn't impose my political beliefs on top of on another person. Sorry, there's something coming up on my screen. But outside of that, I think gratitude is an accepted practice, and it is a reasonable thing to speak about and to talk about. And I also have ways that I introduce concepts that I'll be learning about in Judaism or from Torah study. And whether my patient is Jewish or not, I will often say, listen, this isn't part of my psychology training, but I was reading something by Rabbi Aaron the other day, and it suggested to me that you need to think about the idea that there's something spiritual and divine inside you, and that that's an inspiration for you, and that is something that gives you a sense of meaning and purpose when you're able to tap into that deeper part of yourself. And I'm hearing something that you're speaking about that's making me feel that that's coming to life in you and that you have more access to it. And I don't think I'm breaking any laws by passing on those kinds of ideas. And, I've even had patients who have said things like, oh, I hope you're not going to talk about that gratitude crap or that religious stuff or, something like that. And then I'll say things like, well, that's so interesting that you feel that way. And what I notice about people who maybe present as if they don't have a spiritual practice or an idea of some kind of higher power is that in their greatest times of agony, they strangely do end up looking to something with some hope or optimism that possibly there is something bigger than them that they can reach to for comfort. And so I feel like that is so important to be able to hold this idea. And I was also thinking about something interesting about gratitude. When I think of your grandson saying thank you, that's gratitude to another person for something that they've offered them, or as you said, for a show of caring. But what I was thinking about is when I express gratitude for my friends, for my health, for my family, for the beautiful lake at my cottage, for whatever it is that I'm moved by that inspires me, I'm giving gratitude to something that's bigger than me. It has an implied spirituality. And I realized when I was thinking about this topic that there are a number of people who I have worked with who are professed atheists, but they'll say, well, I'm very grateful for my health. And I'm like, grateful to who? I don't say that, but I was thinking about it. Grateful to who? Like, who's on the other side of the hell?
It's so funny. It's so funny, Dr. Bott. Lori Palatnik, who is obviously the founder of Momentum and a colleague and a friend, says that she used to have this conversation with her mother. Her mother always used to say, thank goodness, thank goodness, thank goodness. And it used to annoy her daughter. And once Lori said to her, well, who are you thanking? What's goodness? Whose goodness? And she went, okay, thank God. Like,
right.
Rabbi Aaron, can you weigh in on what we've been talking about? Is there ever a time where you have felt, obviously in the opposite direction, that you, I don't know whether you have any training therapeutically, but has there ever been a time where you were dealing with someone who was interested in growth in Judaism where you said, first you need to go see a shrink?
Well, I wouldn't say shrink.
It's just between us and the 500 people watching, excuse me. Yeah.
Yes, I really do believe that there are times where people have something psychologically unhealthy about them, and they're thinking that turning to religion, in this case as a rabbi, Judaism, is going to be the magic pill. It's going to be a quick fix. Um, I remember when I was in my early days looking for my soulmate, and I was dating a woman, and she was a profoundly religious woman. She had tremendous God consciousness. But as I got to know her more, I started to feel that there's actually something not mentally healthy about this girl. And it was really camouflaged by her religiosity.
Hmm.
She dressed incredibly modestly, which I found really beautiful. But I realized later that she doesn't like herself and she thinks she's ugly. So dressing modest was a good way for her to say, well, I shouldn't look good anyways. And one of the things that tipped me off is she was extraordinarily kind. And I found that beautiful. But then she seemed to be really extraordinarily kind. And I once challenged her on a gift that she gave somebody that I thought would make that person uncomfortable. Well, she got angry at me and she said, "You're interfering with the spontaneity of my kindness." But something felt wrong. And I realized that this girl does not like herself, and that her kindness is a way of trying to win people's love. And it never was enough because she never would believe it. And I realized that no matter how much I would express to her that I cared for her, she would never accept it. And it took me a while to realize that this woman seemed to be a very humble, kind, modest person, but she was actually a person that was suffering very terrible low self-esteem and was constantly seeking approval, and really believed that she was ugly and thought modesty was a way to celebrate her low self-esteem.
Wow.
What eventually happened is she left Judaism, and she really got mentally ill, and it was very sad. And so sometimes a person can reach out to Judaism or some other religion, hoping that it will actually give them some quick fix to something that's deeply broken inside.
Oh,
And if you have somebody who's compulsive, obsessive, or obsessive compulsive, never which one comes first, and then you introduce them to Jewish law, and you tell them you have to wash your hands in the morning, and they wash their hands 100 times. Like so there are times where somebody wants to make a move and embrace more Judaism in their life, and I say, you know what? Let's slow down here, because if a person does this from an unhealthy place, it's not going to go to a healthy place because it's starting from an unhealthy place. We have a principle called derech eretz kadma Torah, being a mensch, being just being
I'm going to
human.
stop you for a minute and ask you to translate that for the benefit of those who do not understand Hebrew.
Right. Well, actually, I was translating it, but in a conceptual way, but I'll do that.
Okay,
Derech eretz means the way of the land, which means just the natural basic qualities of humanness. And before a person can kind of embrace Torah, derech eretz kadma Torah, you first have to work at being a mensch, being fundamentally human, healthy human. And then you can add to that the next level of being holy. But before you can be holy, you have to be healthy. And so it really does worry me. And actually, I just had a conversation with one of my students who his parents had embraced Judaism at a young age. And he grew up religious. And the parents had a very difficult marriage, and they dropped Shabbat and dropped kosher. They dropped everything. And he always thought that Judaism was the reason why their marriage fell apart. They dropped Judaism and then they got divorced maybe 2 years later. But then he realized that it wasn't Judaism that damaged their marriage. They had an unhealthy marriage. It had nothing to do with Judaism. Judaism made it more unhealthy, but it wasn't the source of what made it unhealthy. They had unhealthy, and he realized that both his parents had embraced Judaism because they had very dysfunctional backgrounds. They had terrible relationship with their parents, and they were looking to jump into some friendly community that would embrace them. But we have to be very, very careful that Torah is taught with patience and clarity, that if a person needs therapy, someone comes to me, I tell them, I'm not a therapist. This is out of my league. I'm not a therapist. And for some reason, people often think that rabbis know everything. And that's not true. I'm the only one that it's true about. But it's definitely not true about any other rabbi. I mean, people come to me with marriage problems, and they somehow think that I'm not a therapist. I didn't study therapy. I'm good at what I'm good at, and I try to be, humbly aware of it's not my training.
So I'm gonna stop you both for a minute because the chat function is so filled with questions that I have to allow some of them in. So the first one I think would be for you, Dr. Bott. Do narcissists have the capacity to be grateful?
I luckily saw that go across the screen, so I had a moment to think about it. So that's a really interesting question. And, there's narcissistic personality styles, and then there's an actual narcissistic personality disorder. And if you're talking about someone who has a severe narcissistic personality disorder, what you might find is that they can think gratitude, but not feel gratitude.
Ooh.
So what I mean by that is that they'll know that if, say, I'm thinking of people that I know, so sometimes often like a very successful narcissist will be very philanthropic because they know that looks good and they get all kinds of notoriety from it. And you'll see them express gratitude, but they're doing it because they know that that's what makes them look good, as opposed to actually feeling a genuine sense of gratitude. And that's not to diminish the effort. It's that they don't actually have a capacity to understand how to value the value of another.
Wow. Woof. Another question. Actually, I guess this one probably would be, gratitude is really important, but what about ambition, Rabbi Aaron? The desire to explore and develop and not just accept the wonders of the present.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a teaching that who is truly rich, wealthy, is a samech bechelko, someone that is happy with their portion. So that's often misunderstood as be happy with your portion and don't want more. But actually, our portion is that we always want more. That is our portion. That's who we are. We are human becomings. We're not human beings. We're human becomings. We love to grow. We need to grow. And we should be thankful for what we have. And we should be thankful for the ability to be ambitious and have more. And then be thankful for having more. But being thankful for what you have shouldn't diminish the desire to have more. Again, have more of what? Right. So that's obviously a conversation, what's really worth having more of. But ambition is something we should be grateful that we have been wired to be ambitious. What generates positive emotion is growth. And so we feel good about ourselves, not when we achieve, but when we are working and we feel we're taking steps towards our achievement. And so absolutely, we should be thankful for what we have. And one of the things we have is being wired and programmed for being ambitious and growth-minded creatures.
Wow. Can I just say something that came to mind about that, just from a different perspective around a piece of that, is that one of the things I think about with ambition, I guess I'm sort of still thinking about the narcissistic question, is that there's ambition for the service of doing good and for making a contribution. And then there's ambition that's in the service of our egos. And if that still does good, it's still meaningful and worthwhile. But I do think when we think about our ambition and our personal evolution, I know even with myself, sometimes I'll be excited about something and I just sort of want to check for a minute, like, well, why am I excited about this? Like, what part of myself is this serving? And I find that the things that are most meaningful from an ambitious perspective are the things that make a difference and that I can see the growth in my contribution and what it's making a difference in. and then remembering where those things come from in myself to be able to do that, which is a gift in itself.
You know, a question just came in. How do I convince myself to be kind to myself? That's a loaded question. But, you know, I think I'm going to ask both of you to take a go at that from the way you would hear it, Dr. Bott, as a therapist, and the way you would hear it, Rabbi Aaron, if it was asked to you as a rabbi. So how do I convince myself to be kind to myself?
You want me to start?
Yeah,
Sure.
you start. Yeah.
I heard a philosopher once say something that I just love. He said, we'd be better off talking to ourselves more than listening to ourselves.
Huh.
When we listen to ourselves, there's all this negative chatter. I don't deserve this. I don't get this. I'm that. I'm bad. I'm that. You know, we've kind of internalized some very negative sentences that sadly we were unfortunately victims of. And we have to talk over that. And so we have to talk, even if we don't believe it. You talk the talk. And, you know, I don't believe in fake it till you make it. I believe in fake it till you awake it. Because I believe that deep inside, we are souls, and a soul is a part of God. And how could you treat a part of God in an unkind way? So when you are just not aware of who you are, and so we're not faking it till we make it. We have to fake it until we awaken from within us, because I believe deep in the unconscious, we know we're valuable. We know we're meaningful. We know we matter. We know we're part of that which is much greater than ourselves. But a lot of things have happened on the way that have convinced us to stop believing in ourselves. And one of the things I always thought when I was a kid and I went to Hebrew school, I thought Judaism was all about believing in God. And only when I had the opportunity for an adult education of Judaism, I found out that Judaism is really about believing in a God that believes in me. And if the God you believe in doesn't believe in you, don't believe in him. And I remember I had one of my teachers said, you know, that he said, you don't have to prove to people there's a God. He said, I've traveled the world. Most people actually do believe in God, but what they don't believe is that God believes in them. And they don't want anything to do with a God that doesn't believe in them. So they're okay with saying, you know, maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't, you know, even if there is, it's irrelevant to me. That's right, because they don't believe in a God that believes in them. And so how do I convince myself to be kind to myself? I have to start redefining who I am. And I have no right to mistreat myself. You know, it's like when you're married to someone, you have no right to mistreat yourself because you're mistreating them, because they have to live with you, you know, and you're a part of them. And so you have no right to do that. So I believe that the world needs more of you, and you owe it to the world to be kind to yourself. Because when people are miserable, they seem to successfully make everybody else miserable around them. And I call miserable miserable. You're so stuck in me. And so when you're so stuck in the me, you're not kind to yourself, because who am I? What am I? I'm a little me. But so we have to really work at not listening to ourselves, but talking to ourselves. And when that voice in there says, you're no good, you're not worth it, you say, who are you? Who asked you to talk in the first place? And just talk yourself into who you really
are. That's brilliant advice, and it sounds vaguely cognitive therapy.
I was
Dr.
going to say that you, Rabbi Aaron, you do sound like a therapist. You may not have had training, but that really would have been a great intervention.
It's all in the merit of learning Torah. Thank God.
Dr. Bott, I'm going to ask you to help us close by answering that same question. That question is, how do I convince myself to be kind to myself? How would a therapist answer it?
I feel like even the word convincing myself almost has a negative undertone to it. It has a pressure to it. It has a should quality to it.
Mm.
And so, what I would say is that, similar to Rabbi Aaron, is that we have negative voices in our heads. Some people have louder ones than other people do. And part of the goal of therapy is to build up your observing self that might notice that negative voice that's making a little too much noise, and that actually draws on a new voice or another voice that has something else to say about it. Like, this isn't helpful. I'd like to move on in a different, more positive way. And so, Adrian, you talk about this a lot when you speak, that we strengthen the muscle that we use. So if we start using the kind and respectful voice to ourselves, then we're going to be weakening the more negative voice that isn't helpful.
Rabbi Aaron, Dr. Bott, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your expertise with us. The conversation has been fascinating. I've been watching the numbers. Instead of going down, as what usually happens on longer sessions, they just keep growing and growing and growing. There have been a lot of questions and comments, and somebody even wants to know if she can become a patient, Dr. Bott. So we hope that you can join us again in the future for more deep conversations like this. And to everybody out there in Momentum Land, we're going to take a break on Friday because of the civic holiday in America. But please be sure to join us this Monday, November 30th, for a fabulous dedicated to Hanukkah. And while this beautiful holiday might look a little different this year, there are still a lot of miracles to celebrate and to be grateful for. So together with trip leader Neely Cousins, we're going to explore beautiful lessons from Hanukkah's story that will warm your heart and your home. Also, don't forget our virtual conference, Action Con, Unmasking Your Superpower to Mend the World. That's coming up really soon. And it's going to be from December 6th to 8th, from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern time every day. The first hour of it is totally free. The last 2 hours of it are a chance to really revitalize your soul. After the celebrity keynotes and the inspiring talks with the top Jewish educators, you get intimate coaching sessions and really motivating breakout sessions so that you can create your own action plan. So make sure it's only $36 for 3 days. Click the link in the chat to register. And for me, Adrian Gold Davis, and all of us at Momentum, remember that as we learn and we grow together, these words from the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks: thankfulness has an inner connection with humility. It recognizes that what we are and what we have is due to others and above all to God. Wishing our friends in the US a happy and healthy Thanksgiving. See you soon.